This is live from New Delhi. You're watching DT India News Hour. DT India, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Button. Coming up in the next hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Washington, D.C. for bilateral meet with U.S. President Donald Trump. U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard calls on the Indian Prime Minister. President Trump says Putin and Zelensky want peace. Phone calls to both kick off talks to end Ukraine war immediately. NATO faces moment of truth on alliance's future, warns France's defense minister, as US wants Europe to take security into its own hands. At least 28 injured after a car drives into a crowd in the southern German city of Munich. We begin with the latest from US on Prime Minister Modi's visit. Our top story. Prime Minister Modi is set to hold high-stakes meeting with President Donald Trump today in a while from now. Prime Minister Modi is among the first foreign leaders to meet President Trump after the US leader took over as the 47th president of the country. Prime Minister Modi's nearly 36-hour-long trip to the US underscores long-standing rapport and bonhomie the two leaders share. Remember, this is the second leg of his two-nation visit. The visit aims to strengthen India-US relations, focusing on key areas such as technology, trade, defense, energy, supply chain, resilience and global security challenges, highlighting the depth of the bilateral relationship between India and United States. These are the visuals of Prime Minister's arrival earlier. In fact, Prime Minister Modi is staying at the Blair House, the historic guest lodging for dignitaries visiting the White House. Prime Minister Modi is also scheduled to hold bilateral meetings with President Trump. On your screens, the resounding welcome accorded to Indian Prime Minister Modi by the Indian diaspora there, who waited for long hours in the chilling winters to welcome Prime Minister Modi. This is Prime Minister Modi's first bilateral visit to the US since Trump was sworn in for his second term and places him among the select few foreign leaders visiting Washington within weeks of the new administration's inauguration. Prime Minister Modi is the fourth foreign leader to meet Trump in the White House in less than a month after he assumed office for the second term. He will also be meeting several members of the Trump's cabinet, as well as US business leaders and members of the Indian American community. And earlier, as we just showed you, we can go back to those visuals. Prime Minister Modi was accorded a resounding welcome from the Indian diaspora. Braving the chilling winter, members of the Indian community gathered outside the hotel, waving Indian tricolours as gesture to greet Prime Minister. In fact, Prime Minister Modi reciprocated, waving his hand to the people and talking also to the members of the Indian community.
अनुभव जो है बहुत ही अच्छा रहा। ये कहें कि विश्व का सब कुछ मिल गया। मोदी जी ने हमें आशीर्वाद दिया और भारत के प्रधानमंत्री जो कि इतने सुलझे हुए, इतने पहुंचे हुए, इतने कर्मठ इंसान हैं, जो लाखों करोड़ों भारतवासियों की दिन रात सेवा कर रहे हैं, ऐसे महापुरुष का आशीर्वाद पाकर जीवन धन्य हो गया।
बहुत अच्छा लगा, मोदी जी से हाथ मिलाया। मोदी जी ने बहुत खुश हो गया देख के मोदी जी को।
बहुत बढ़िया है। हमें उससे मिलकर बहुत खुशी हुई। इतना थक गए थे तो भी उसने टाइम निकाला और सब लोगों से मिले और अच्छी तरह से बात की और हमारे कंसर्न सुने और बहुत अच्छा लगा।
We were waiting for him, so we got to see him very close. So I really am liking it. Like it was
see him so close. It was really nice.
It's all worth it. Like 5 hours we are standing in this weather. It's freaking cold and you're freezing, but it's all worth it. Just one glance of him and he's so nice. Like, we just love him.
US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard also called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi upon his arrival. Prime Minister Modi fondly recalled his earlier interactions with Gabbard. The discussions touched upon enhancing bilateral intelligence cooperation, particularly in counter-terrorism, cyber-city, emerging threats and strategic intelligence sharing. They also exchanged views on regional and global developments of mutual interest, reaffirming their commitment to a secure, stable and rules-based international order. Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as the top US spy on Wednesday, with the Republican support behind a nominee once considered one of the President Donald Trump's most controversial picks. We have more on her.
Do you solemnly swear? I, Tulsi Gabbard, do solemnly swear.
Tulsi Gabbard was sworn in as the top US spy on Wednesday. At the swearing-in ceremony, US President Donald Trump praised Gabbard and also entrusted her with overseeing urgently needed reforms to the US intelligence community to protect the rights and the civil liberties of all Americans.
Faith and allegiance to the same.
Tulsi Gabbard's an American of extraordinary courage and exceptional patriotism. She's devoted her entire life to public service, and I've watched her for years on different shows and everything. I said, she's a woman of great common sense, and, we like the common sense.
In response, Gabbard expressed her commitment to focus on ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people.
So I look forward to being able to help fulfill that mandate that the American people delivered to you very clearly in this election, to refocus our intelligence community by empowering the great patriots who have chosen to serve our country in this way, and focus on ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people.
Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party in 2022 to become an independent before finally backing Donald Trump and joining the Republican Party in 2024. She has served 4 terms in the House of Representatives. She will now lead an agency established after September 11, 2001 terror attacks to coordinate US's intelligence operations, one of the most critical national security roles in the US government. Earlier, the Republican-controlled US Senate confirmed Tulsi Gabbard as Trump's choice to lead the country's intelligence services. Gabbard scraped through a 52 to 48 floor vote. Gabbard had looked vulnerable, but 3 Republican holdouts finally ended up lying behind her. Bureau Report, TD India.
The special admiration and personal rapport, in fact, between Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump will take center stage, besides a big uptick expected in strategic cooperation across various sectors. Well, from their first meeting in Washington, D.C. way back in 2017 to the grand Howdy Modi event in Houston in 2019 and Trump's historic visit to India in 2020, the relations between the two countries and most importantly the two leaders have strengthened in areas, and bilaterally the relationship has consolidated in defense, trade and technology. Rabindra Chauhan of DD India takes us through the times the leaders of the world's oldest and largest democracies have had together so far.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the United States at the invitation of US President Donald Trump. This visit is considered significant as both leaders aim to pick up where they left off 4 years ago in the India-US relationship. For nearly 3 decades, US presidents from both parties have prioritized building ties with India, viewing it as a natural partner in countering a rising China. This visit comes amid the world's ongoing conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Washington on Wednesday after attending an artificial intelligence summit in Paris, making him the 4th world leader to visit US President Donald Trump at the White House since his return. Both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump have much in common. having campaigned on promises to promote the interests of their country's majority communities and shifting long-held democratic norms by persistently pursuing their critics. An important bridge between the two countries is the largest group of South Asian Americans in the US who are of Indian origin. In 2019, US President Donald Trump joined Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at a gathering of Indian Americans in Houston, as stated by the White House, showcasing the strong bond between the two leaders. In February 2020, Modi invited Trump before a cheering crowd of more than 100,000 people to inaugurate the world's largest cricket stadium. PM Modi was one of the first leaders to congratulate Trump on his re-election through a tweet followed by a phone call. After the inauguration of President Trump, PM Modi spoke to him again on 27th of January. India and the United States have prioritized strengthening their ties, particularly at a crucial time when President Trump has unapologetically weaponized tariffs against both friends and foes. Since returning to office, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit has once again drawn the world's attention to the importance of their relationship. With Rabindra Chauhan, Tanvi Taneja for DD India.
And still to come on DD India NewsHour, coming up next, we get you this spectacular footage of dazzling colors of northern lights released by NASA's International Space Station.
Goa, a food paradise, both steeped in historical culinary tradition and at the forefront of a modern-day food revolution that is fresher, more local, and more global than ever before. I'm embarking on a journey across the state to explore the very best of food here.
This is honestly my favorite way to eat an egg.
Break bread with some of Goa's most loved chefs and understand what food really means to communities here. Watch Postcards from Goa on National Geographic.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Sakal Bhatt. Tensions continue to rise in the Israel-Gaza ceasefire, but there seems to be a breakthrough in mediation efforts. Egypt and Qatar have managed to overcome some obstacles and hitches that were blocking the deal, with both Israel and Hamas now committed to its full implementation. We have more.
Amid growing disputes over the ceasefire agreement, diplomatic efforts led by Egypt and Qatar have made progress. Mediators confirmed that the key roadblocks hindering the truce have now been addressed, ensuring the deal moves forward. Earlier, Hamas reaffirmed its commitment to honoring the truce despite facing its most significant crisis since it began. The group stated that mediators were working to secure the release of hostages this weekend as originally planned. But Israel has issued a strong warning. If Hamas fails to release captives on schedule, it will resume military operations in Gaza.
If Hamas halts the release of the hostages, then there is no agreement and there will be war. The new Gaza war will be different in intensity from the one before the ceasefire, and it will not end without the defeat of Hamas and the release of all the hostages.
With both sides reaffirming their positions, all eyes are now on the coming days to see if the ceasefire holds or if conflict will reignite. Bureau Report, DD India.
In other news, France's defense minister has warned on Thursday that NATO faces a moment of reckoning on its future as the United States and Russia set in motion negotiations on ending the war in Ukraine. France's defense minister Sébastien Lecornu said that NATO allies need to think long-term and beef up their defense industries as Washington demands that Europe takes security into its own hands. He says, and I quote, "It's crucial moment of truth," unquote. This, he said, ahead of the NATO meeting in Brussels.
The most important, the strongest military alliance in history. That's historically true. But the question is, will it still be true 10 or 15 years from now?
In other news, US President Donald Trump has made a bold assertion of sorts that he had, and I quote, lengthy and highly productive, quote unquote, phone conversation with Vladimir Putin on Wednesday, in which the leaders reportedly agreed to begin negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. President Trump said that he and the Russian president had agreed to have their respective teams start negotiations immediately. In fact, later, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also added that he had spoken with Trump about, and I quote, lasting, reliable peace. Sagnik of DD India gets us more.
Efforts to end the Ukraine conflict gained momentum, with US President Donald Trump reaching out to the main stakeholders of the conflict, Russia and Ukraine, by calling both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in separate phone calls. The US president has set the ball rolling as he instructed officials to begin talks on ending the conflict. Trump said Putin wants the war to end, and they discussed getting a ceasefire in the not-too-distant future. The Kremlin said Putin and Trump had agreed to meet and that the Russian president was impressed by Trump's position on ending the Ukraine conflict.
There is a political will which was emphasized during a conversation to conduct a dialogue in search of a settlement. There is agreement that a peaceful negotiated settlement is possible.
Trump said their first meeting would probably take place soon in Saudi Arabia. Trump announced that Secretary of State Marco Rubio, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, and Middle East Envoy Steve Witkoff would lead negotiations on ending the war. Trump and Zelensky spoke after Trump's call with Putin.
And I think we're on the way to getting peace. I think President Putin wants peace, and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed.
Very substantive negotiations with the United States of America. I had a good, in-depth conversation with President Trump, and I appreciate the President's genuine interest in our shared opportunities and how we can bring true peace closer together.
The development followed remarks by US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth that Kyiv would have to give up its long-held goals of joining the NATO military alliance and regaining all of its territory seized by Russia.
We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. Chasing this illusionary goal will only prolong the war and cause more suffering. That said, the United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. To be clear, as part of any security guarantee, there will not be U.S. troops deployed to Ukraine.
Reacting to the latest American moves, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte stressed that Ukraine must be a part of any peace talks and that a final deal to end Russian and Ukraine conflict must be enduring.
We all want peace in Ukraine, rather sooner than later. We all want Ukraine to be in the best possible position when those talks start, to make sure that they can be concluded successfully. And as also Pete Hegseth said yesterday, the new American Secretary of Defense, it is crucial that whatever comes out of those talks, it is durable, it is enduring. No Minsk III. We cannot have that again. We cannot have Putin again trying to capture a square kilometer, a square mile of Ukraine in the future.
EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, said Europe and Ukraine need to be involved in peace talks for any deal to work, and said it wasn't good tactics to give in to Russia's demands before negotiations have even started.
It is clear that any deal behind our backs will not work. Any agreement will need also Ukraine and Europe being part of it, and this is clear that appeasement also always fails. So Ukraine will continue to resist, and Europe will continue to back Ukraine.
Swedish Defense Minister Paul Johnson said that Ukraine could still join NATO in the future, provided it meets all the necessary conditions.
Well, as far as I understand, the U.S. position from this administration is that this is about they're claiming that NATO membership should not be part of this political agreement. I don't foresee the NATO membership as such being off the table for Ukraine. Our position is well known and communicated, and we stand behind what was said at the Washington summit, of course, that Ukraine's future is in NATO.
Prior to Trump's phone calls, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent held talks with Zelensky, where Bessent said that minerals deal will give Kiev post-war security shield. Bureau Report, DD India.
And now let's take a look at the other stories very quickly making the news around the world. We begin with French National Assembly adopting a bill which will toughen juvenile justice, including the creation of an immediate appearance procedure. Out of 183 MPs, 125 have voted in favour and remaining 58 in against of the decision. With lava flowing from the new Boca Nuova crater and smoke plumes rising from its peak, Mount Etna put on an enthralling display. The tallest volcano in Europe was the subject of ongoing seismic activity. Mount Etna frequently erupts but infrequently causes any damage. With the earliest known observation dating back to 425 BC, it is said to have oldest documented history of eruptions of any volcanoes. The James Webb Space Telescope to study an asteroid named 2024 YR4, which holds chance that it could hit Earth in 2032. The asteroid is estimated to be between 40 meters and 90 meters across and traveling at around 15 times the speed of a high-velocity bullet. And footage of dazzling colors of the aurora borealis, also known as the Northern Lights, was released by NASA's International Space Station. The aurora is caused by energetic particles that can shoot out from the sun in a continuous stream known as the solar wind. Going back to our top story on India-US ties, India and United States share a comprehensive global strategic partnership which is driven by democratic values, shared interests and vibrant people-to-people contacts. Prime Minister Modi's recent visit to the US aims to bolster these bilateral ties, focusing on trade, defense, energy, technology, counter-terrorism, cooperation and educational collaboration, further enhancing the relationship. We have more.
India and the United States enjoy a comprehensive global strategic partnership covering almost all areas of human endeavor, and this driven by shared democratic values, convergence of interest on a range of issues, and vibrant people-to-people connects. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent visit to the United States underscores further strengthening of bilateral ties with a focus on trade, defense, energy, and technology. Cooperation in counter-terrorism is one of the pillars of the bilateral partnership, featuring information exchange, capacity building, operational cooperation, and regular dialogue through the India-US Joint Working Group on Counter-Terrorism. In 2017, both sides initiated a dialogue on domestic and international terrorist designations listing proposals. Education partnership is an important pillar of Indo-US ties with strong linkages and history of higher education collaborations. Both countries support scholarships and grants to US and Indian scholars, professionals and students. Global Initiative of Academic Networks or GIAN was launched by India in 2015 to facilitate visits by 1,000 US teachers annually to teach in India. India-US defense cooperation is based on new framework. On July 30, 2018, India was moved into the Tier 1 of the US Department of Commerce's Strategic Trade Authorization License exception. The United States is the largest trading partner of India. Bilateral trades in goods and services stood at $190.1 billion for the calendar year 2023. During the financial year 2023-24, US was the third largest source of FDI into India with inflows of US dollars, $4.9 billion accounting for almost 9% of the total FDI equity inflows. Cultural cooperation between two countries is rich and manifests in diverse ways. There are India-focused educational program In universities and educational institutions, Indian embassies and consulates organize various cultural events to showcase diverse facets of Indian culture. Sayyid Absarul Hassan for DD India.
And still to come on DD India NewsHour. Coming up next, we will examine with the subject expert the importance, the significance of Prime Minister Modi's this visit to United States of America under Trump's administration.
Prasar Bharati, in collaboration with IIT Delhi and Software Technology Parks of India, is organizing the DD Robocon 2025 this year as well. In this National Robotics Championship, engineering students will get ample opportunities to showcase their ingenuity and potential. The national selection for this championship will be held on the 12th and 13th of July, and the winning team will get an opportunity to participate in the International ABU Robocon Championship to be held in Mongolia in August this year. So, hurry up! The last date of registration is the 16th of February. For more information, log on to www.ddrobocon.iitd.ac.in.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and before we move on, let's take a quick look at the headlines that we are tracking at this hour. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Washington, D.C. for a bilateral meet with President Donald Trump. U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard calls on the Indian Prime Minister. Trump says President Putin and Zelensky want peace. Phone calls to both kick off talks to end Ukraine war immediately. At least 28 injured after a car drives into a crowd in the southern German city of Munich. And let's quickly go live across to Washington, D.C., from where DD India's senior correspondent Shubhendu Ghosh joins us live. Good morning to you, Shubhendu. It's a chilly morning out there, but lots to look forward as far as the entire media is concerned, especially India. Well, take us through, first of all, the engagements of Honorable Prime Minister. It's a packed visit, 36 hours nearly. What all is expected?
Absolutely. Good morning from a very chilly Washington, D.C., Sakal, but the focus of the day is going to be the warmth of relations between India and the United States as the first meeting takes place between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump in the new administration. Yes, it's a very, very packed visit. Since last evening, the moment Prime Minister arrived in Washington, D.C., the bilaterals, the engagements with the heads of different departments of the new administration had started. We saw Tulsi Gabbard calling on Prime Minister Narendra Modi last evening. Today also there are a series of engagements lined up. Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk are all scheduled to call on Prime Minister before the big meeting takes place post-lunch between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Host of issues we know are in focus in this particular meeting. It is expected to really lay down the roadmap for these two leaders to take forward as far as India-America relations are concerned. Also, the personal rapport, the warmth that the two leaders share, the trust factor, the manner in which it will be conveyed through their body language is something that one will have to look out for. So a lot that is going to happen today. Sakal, focus on India-US ties.
Okay, the fact that Prime Minister Modi is the fourth foreign leader to visit Trump post him taking over the presidency sort of underscores the significance Trump's administration attaches to India under the dispensation of Prime Minister Modi. What are the sentiments there as far as the US side is concerned?
Absolutely, Sakal. There is no doubt about it. Both sides have time and again, and in a very bipartisan way, have conveyed that the India-United States relationship is the most indispensable relationship, diplomatic relationship, international partnership to look out for in the 21st century. Is the most consequential one. we look at any area where these countries engage. We talk about trade. America is India's largest trade partner. We talk about the strategic partnership, which is greatly in focus throughout in the recent years, especially in the domain of Indo-Pacific. We know that alongside Australia and Japan, India and United States are key members and are going to be in the years ahead particularly responsible for the manner in which free and fair Indo-Pacific, the vision of that is made possible. So you name it, the area and India-US ties become hugely important. The Trump administration understands that very clearly. Also the kind of tariff tussle that it is engaging with in China in many ways, whether it is supply chain, whether it is critical mineral defense co-production, India is seen as a important, viable, equal partner with the United States. So no wonder that's so early into the administration coming to power, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is here to hold talks with President Donald Trump.
Okay, Shubhendu, one final question. You know, the reaction of the Indian diaspora is always, though we don't have an Howdy event scheduled this time around, but then we saw those visuals, how the Indian community members waited in chilly winters to welcome Prime Minister Modi. Did you get to speak to the diaspora? How are they looking at this visit?
Oh yes, Sakal, and it is interesting that not every sentiment may be expressed in numbers. So there may not be a mega diaspora program scheduled at this time. But coming back to what we were talking about in the beginning of our conversation, it's a very, very cold weather in Washington, D.C. It snowed a couple of days back. It was raining yesterday when the diaspora members under the open sky were waiting to meet and greet Prime Minister Narendra Modi. All of them very excited. Children, people of all age groups, despite the bitter cold, all excited to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and they're also excited with the work that the two leaders, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, together are likely to do towards taking India-US ties forward. In that sense, there's a lot of investment of faith and confidence, and also in the friendship of the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. So in that sense, the diaspora is quite kicked.
Yes. And what does the US establishment intend to invest in? Shubhendu, just stay with us. We are going to go, in fact, let's quickly welcome Richard Rosso joining us live from Washington, D.C. as Shubhendu also stays with us on this broadcast. Richard Rosso is the Senior Advisor and Chair in U.S.-India Policy Studies at CSIS. Thank you very much, Richard. It's such a pleasure and an honor for us to have you on the National News Broadcaster of India, DD India. To begin with, take us through the symbolism and in fact more of a substance may be attached to this visit of Prime Minister Modi in Trump 2.0 administration. From American perspective, run us through the significance of this visit.
Well, when we think about whether it's commercial relations, security relations, or even people-to-people ties, India plays very high to any American administration on all three fronts. India is one of our 10 largest commercial trade partners. And when you think about India in the next 4 years is going to jump over both Japan as well as Germany and become the world's third largest economy, we got to get the economic relationship right. It's already pretty good, but there's always more that we can do. On the second front, when you think about strategic ties, India is not one of our core security partners like NATO, but we do see a lot of overlap in terms of security cooperation, shared concerns about the rise of China. And so there's a lot of good things that we can do in that space. And then people to people, the largest source of students coming and visiting from overseas is from India, technology workers. So a lot happening on the people to people side as well. So not surprising that India has pride of place as one of the first leaders to come in, that President Trump has personally said that he wanted to make sure that he really does build up this relationship, because in all the main fronts, there's not a lot of more important places that we can put a big bet.
There's going to be a lot of thrust on investments and job creation. Trade, like you just mentioned, is going to apparently figure in the conversations today. Rosso, if you could just take us through those high points, though there are no technically any bilateral meetings, but is going to be meeting some of the key cabinet members of the Trump administration. So I think that makes it very, significant in terms of the final deliverables or outcomes.
Yeah, I think we have some idea about what both leaders want to get out of the summit. From President Trump's viewpoint, as I know has been discussed quite a bit, They'd like to see India announce more purchases of U.S. goods, and in particular the things the government of India actually controls. So that's typically defense items and hydrocarbons. Second, President Trump would love for Prime Minister Modi to really give a nudge to Indian industry to make more investments in the United States and build jobs and create more economic opportunities here in the United States. And third, India, because of the Make in India program, has adopted some measures that have actually closed the market a bit to U.S. exports. Customs duty increases, local manufacturing rules, and seeing some of that get removed would be on President Trump's shortlist. From India's standpoint, the United States is by far the top destination for exports. So they want to avoid a larger trade war, and finding ways to accommodate President Trump's interest is going to be important. India's got some ability right now to push President Trump on relaxing export controls on sensitive items like defense equipment. I think President Trump is more likely to do that to increase exports rather than being overly concerned about security-related measures. And I think so. When you look at both sides, there's a lot on the table right now. I suspect we'll see announcements in most of these areas, including as well immigration and the joint statement later today. So a lot on the table that's going to really help companies on both sides do a bit more business with each other.
Okay, just stay with us. Let me take this point to my colleague, Richard, just stay with us, to my colleague Shubhendu. Shubhendu, you want to come in here on that point of, talks particularly revolving around H-1B visa holders, smoothening visa process, because in the education vector, students, you had that interaction with a couple of students there, Indian students there. So you think this is going to come up when the two leaders talk, something related to this?
That is hugely significant, Sakal, as our guest just mentioned, that India, in fact, is the largest center of foreign students to United States. The number stands at roughly 3.3 lakh Indian students studying in American universities. Many, these are top universities, many would like an opportunity to work here. But the people we spoke to, the students, they shared that the H-1B visa, although the larger percentage of it is Indian students who get the benefit of it, but there is still a degree of randomness in which it's allocated. They would like a more merit-driven list as far as H-1B visa, more certainty, more clarity in the way these policies are taken forward. We understand that President Donald Trump's priorities is his vision of Make America Great Again also involves a certain degree of protectionism. Now, that we'll have to see the manner in which that can coexist, complement the partnership with countries like India. So those are some elements where youngsters, students who are looking to make a future in the United States in particular would like more clarity. Thousands of qualified Indians, doctors, engineers come here, deliver their services, contribute to the American economy. They would also like more clarity on the manner in which they can create a future for themselves and also for India and the US.
Yes. Richard, your thoughts on that, and also on the fact that the US has recognized India as one of its key partners in maintaining regional stability. In the recent past, we have seen, irrespective of the administration there, the revival of Quad and the important initiatives that the both nations have taken in terms of ensuring regional stability, regional security. Your thoughts on that, Indo-Pacific specifically?
I think both countries, while we very much understand India's stated policy of multi-alignment, I know there's various terms we use it, but there is not a lot of daylight that we both consider China to be the greatest threat to security across the Indo-Pacific. And so, at least on that, there's a lot of complementarity. The question is, which part of the geography do we consider most important? To most American security analysts, when you think about the threat China poses, it's South China Sea, it's the Taiwan Straits, the East China Sea, maybe even islands in the middle of the Pacific. To Indian analysts, for obvious reasons, you think about the border issue, you think about China's continued incursions in Bhutan, you think about the PLA Navy's expanded presence in the Indian Ocean. So that's really the job that leaders have to do now, is not so much agreeing that China is a threat that we need to collaborate on, but which geography, how can India be more present in the Pacific theater, and how can the United States be more present in the Indian Ocean region? I don't think India wants American presence on the border or something like that, but there is some work that we can do to try to make sure that we're accommodating each other's interests, but no daylight in the question about whether China presents the biggest threat in the Indo-Pacific. So that's certainly a good base to be able to do some big things on. But luckily, India actually is starting to resolve some of its tension points, which we all love to see. In the United States, there's some question about whether Trump might be able to initiate a big deal, a grand bargain with China that will reduce some of our tensions, at least on trade front. So, we stand strong together in hopes that we can actually get a more accommodating China and reduce the points of tension.
How do you see the relationship growing from strategic partner to this indispensable, if I may be allowed to use this word, ally? Shubhendu, this one for you, and perhaps Richard can also come in here. Relationship with United States, especially Trump-Modi, the way it's panned out since 2017. Shubhendu, and then Richard on that.
Absolutely. There are many aspects to it, Sakal, especially in strategic terms. So we know the significance of Quad cannot be underrated, especially given the kind of importance that the region of Indo-Pacific has assumed in the current times. And remember, it was President Donald Trump in his tenure one, in Trump 1.0, is when he had revived the Quad, and from there on we've seen it going from strength to strength. In that sense, the two leaders, their shared concerns, the opportunities that exist, a Quad is, as they've time and again said, is not a military alliance against any country, but an alliance of like-minded democratic countries to take forward the values, to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific for the benefit of all countries, not just these four, but the hundreds of other small island countries also in the region. So in that sense, the priority and the convergence that India and the United States have in these areas of cooperation is very significant. Counter-terrorism is also something which is very close to both the leaders. They would like to keep that as a priority, put their resources together. Sharing of intelligence is hugely significant between India and the US. So all these areas, Sakal, where these two countries working together under leadership of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump, who understand one another better, and the sort of rapport that they have right at the top, that helps also cascade that sense of cooperation and efficiency in the administration of both the countries in critical issues.
Okay, taking a cue from there, Richard, how do you see this relationship trajectory from Howdy Trump to today when they meet in White House? Yes.
In Trump's last term, I think India and a lot of other partners in the Indo-Pacific felt that, frankly, the U.S. Strategy towards China was evolving far too slowly, considering the rising number of threats that China posed, not just on trade, but on territorial issues and global governance issues, things like that. With President Trump, who's willing to throw convention totally out the window and press reset on every form of governance, that we're certainly seeing in the second term, to see that quick snap and to articulate China as a threat and an enemy, really gave confidence to a lot of our partners in the region that the United States was suddenly kind of catching up to the fact that China was already belligerent and aggressive with a lot of countries, including India. And that meant, as you rightly point out, the revival of the Quad, which it existed at kind of an assistant secretary level, but he took it to a minister level. And of course, President Biden took it to a leader level, but also a lot of significant programs that were launched bilaterally between the United States and India. President Trump willing to remove some controls on export of critical technologies. So, for instance, armed maritime drones, that was not on the table in the Obama administration, but President Trump authorized and allowed that to happen. You saw a signing of agreements that improve operational interoperability between our two militaries, and President Biden took that to a different level as well. You saw operational issues begin to pick up, where India joined Combined Maritime Force Bahrain. Several Indian shipyards can now allow U.S. Navy vessels to dock there. The one big question I've got on this security partnership, something that India wants a lot, is tech transfer. They want to do co-development of new technologies with U.S. support. And President Trump very focused on sales, not helping others become manufacturing giants and competitive with the United States. That's the one area that we'll have to see if there's any space and daylight for that level of cooperation to kind of continue, which has been something, of course, India wants quite a bit.
Shubhendu, you want to come in here because as Tulsi Gabbard takes over the top intelligence office on Wednesday, and She calls on Prime Minister, and Rosso also pointed out the collaboration in the counter-terrorism. In fact, you also spoke about it. So if you could just connect the dots, and what are you really picking up there? How significant are these meetings? Some of the names we can see in media there, that the meetings that are scheduled reportedly in Blair House today. So the contours of this visit are slowly getting defined in terms of outcomes.
Absolutely. The very names that appear in the bilateral engagement list, Sakal, by itself says volumes about the kind of priorities that India and America lay on issues of security, counter-terror and intelligence sharing. Also, I just want to go back to the point about Trump administration 1.0, when they're still sort of trying to navigate through deciding the manner in which they are going to be dealing with China. But here in Trump 2.0, the choices that President Trump has made, whether it is Secretary of State Marco Rubio or others, we see there is a leadership, there is an entire galaxy, there's an entire administrative structure which is full of pro-India leaders. So in that sense, the Trump administration is very clear about who its closest friends and the greatest adversaries are going to be, and that would from here on determine the kind of policies that are set ahead. Much has been said about a certain tariff diplomacy, a tariff tussle that President Trump had engaged with immediately coming into office. But we saw that after announcing Mexico, Canada and China, the real tariffs were really levied against China only. So in that sense, there is a great degree of clarity about the convergence as far as the priorities of America is concerned. Vis-a-vis India, there are a host of areas where cooperation can be taken forward. As a guest just mentioned, that India would like the idea of co-production of technology. Make in India, its vision in many ways also resonates with President Trump's Make in America. So in that sense, that's what really makes a day like this very exciting, because although it's a very close partnership, the leaders trust one another, but there is a degree of hard negotiation that is going to take place, which is what is going to make the outcome equally significant. What is the manner in which Make in America and Make in India can coexist and complement one another, to just talk about one aspect?
Yes, you're right. I mean, I think you've beautifully pointed out Make in India and Make America Great coming together, convergence of this, very thought in respective administrations. Richard, your final comments, taking cue from what my colleague Shubedu talked about. I mean, do you also think it's going to be very interesting to see how these two leaders, considering the kind of rapport that they've shared, and one from the world's oldest to the one's largest democracies, both leaders coming together?
Yeah, I think on that point of Make America Great Again and Make in India, last time President Trump was in office, both leaders thought about that in terms of a semiconductor, a computer, something like that. And when you think about the final product, and we both want to race to become the major producers, it was a cause of a lot of trade friction last time that President Trump was in office. You saw a medium intensity trade war during that period. I think India's developed a bit of a more nuanced thinking about manufacturing. It is part about being inducted into global supply chains, and the fact that India dropped customs duties on intermediate goods, on capital equipment, there I think you begin to see what these two programs might actually do. If American companies making that capital equipment, the intermediate goods, the basic goods, can find exports that help Make in India become successful. So there is space, I think, that wasn't there 8 years ago for these two programs to work together. But you're going to have to work with nuance and precision to find those areas, find the companies who are going to take advantage of it, and hopefully we'll see some good announcements today in the statement.
All right. Thank you very much. We leave it on that note. Richard Rosso, Senior Advisor and Chair in US-India Policy Studies. Such a pleasure having you on our broadcast. See you again. Thank you, Richard. Namaste. Namaste. And Shubendu, you have a long day ahead. Thank you very much as of now for joining us from this cold, chilly Washington, D.C. Both of you gentlemen, thank you. Thank you. And now let's shift our focus to some news on the national front. But we would also like to tell our viewers that we are going to be mounting a special show at 9 PM IST, tracking Prime Minister Modi's visit in US and today in Washington, his itinerary and all the developments related to that. Meanwhile, coming to the proceedings in Indian Parliament today, in Rajya Sabha, the Joint Committee of the Parliament or the JPC report on the Waqf Amendment Bill 2024 was tabled in Parliament amidst uproar, especially the opposition MPs alleging non-inclusion of dissent note in JPC report. However, the ruling dispensation clarified its stance on the matter. DT India's Anil Thomas gets us these details.
On Thursday, the final day of the first phase of the budget session, the JPC report on the Waqf Amendment Bill was tabled in both houses of Indian Parliament. Opposition parties created an uproar in the Rajya Sabha or the upper house in the morning and later in the Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Indian Parliament, during the report's presentation. This led to a walkout by the opposition.
ये देश को कमजोर करने के लिए जॉन बिटास ये क्वेश्चन आवर जरूर है, लेकिन क्वेश्चन आवर में सबसे बड़ा क्वेश्चन ये है कि कुछ लोग देश को तोड़ने की साजिश करते हैं. कुछ लोग, some people are trying to fight against the Indian state. भारत देश के खिलाफ लड़ रहे हैं. इसलिए यह विपक्ष की आज का वॉकआउट होना, ये ऑन रिकॉर्ड आना चाहिए कि ये देशद्रोही गतिविधियों को प्रोत्साहन देने का एक माध्यम है और उसका एक्सप्रेशन है. और कांग्रेस पार्टी और विपक्ष आज देश के जो लोग खंडित करना चाहते हैं, देश को कमजोर करना चाहते हैं, उनके हाथ मजबूत करने का काम कर रही है, तो विपक्ष कर रही है.
Opposition MPs alleged that their dissent note was not included in the JPC report. However, the ruling party clarified its stance on the matter.
माननीय अध्यक्ष जी, विपक्ष के कुछ सदस्यों ने आपत्ति जताई है कि इनके जो विमत है, डिस्प्यूट्स है, इनको पूरी तरह से नहीं रखा गया है. मैं मेरी पार्टी की ओर से आपको विनती करना चाहता हूं कि विपक्ष के जो डिस्प्यूट्स हैं, एक सिर कर आप संसदीय कार्यप्रणालिका के उपयुक्त रूप में जो जोड़ना है वो जोड़े. इसमें मेरी पार्टी को कोई आपत्ति नहीं.
बात किया और सेक्रेटरीट से जानकारी लेकर के फिर मैंने राज्यसभा में बताया कि रिपोर्ट पूरा पेश किया गया है. रिपोर्ट के साथ जो एनेक्शियर है वो भी सदन के पटल पर रखा गया है.
Later, JPC chairman Jagdambika Pal stated that the opposition's objection was related to the alleged removal of a portion of the dissent note. He clarified that the speaker has directed its inclusion in the report and consent has been given. Therefore, there should be no dispute.
भारत के गृह मंत्री श्री अमित शाह जी ने कहा कि ये जो विपक्ष के द्वारा आपत्ति उठाई जा रही है कि हमारे डिसेंट नोट में हमारी कुछ चीज़ें डिलीट की गई हैं, उन्होंने स्पष्ट तौर से कहा कि हमारी पार्टी को कोई एतराज नहीं है.
In fact, the omitted portions were those where the propriety of the JPC itself was questioned. The removal was done as per parliamentary rules. The Waqf Amendment Bill was initially introduced in the Lok Sabha on August 8 and referred to the JPC. Now that the JPC report has been placed in both the houses of the Indian Parliament, the government will review its recommendations. The revised bill will be approved by the cabinet and may be tabled in Parliament for passage during the budget session. With Anil Thomas, Amit Mukherjee for DD India.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. Let's quickly go through some sports news. India's Home Minister Amit Shah will grace the closing ceremony of the 38th National Games as chief guest in Haldwani in hilly state of Uttarakhand. On Friday, games are underway in Uttarakhand state. The competition has been supremely fierce, where nearly 10,000 athletes and coaches competed in 32 sports as well as 4 demonstration events for glory. We have more by DD India's Narayan Singh.
India's 38th National Games, which is underway in Uttarakhand, will come to a grand conclusion on Friday in Haldwani. The closing ceremony promises to be a spectacular event with honors for record-setting athletes and special performances by top artists. India's Home Minister Amit Shah will be the chief guest at the glittering ceremony with other dignitaries in attendance. Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami inspected the venue and reviewed the security and other arrangements.
It's going to be a really grand show. At the same time, it's going to be very inclusive. And Honorable Chief Minister Sir has himself reviewed the preparations twice. Today morning also was here. We are inviting self-help groups, athletes, other notable persons, people who are achievers in different fields.
With just one day left for the games to conclude, the competition has been fierce.
National Games is such a high quality games, and it's same as like mini Olympics for India, let's say. So it really feels great.
Services Sports Control Board continues to dominate the medal tally, while Maharashtra is at the second place, followed by Haryana. Nearly 10,000 athletes and coaches compete at the games, which feature 32 sports as well as 4 demonstration events. The remarkable success of games showcases the growing sporting culture in the country. Sports Desk, DD India.
Well, that's all in this edition of DD India NewsHour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from DD India and across the world on our mobile app, which is on your screens. You can download it on your Android and iOS platforms. That's the QR code. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. On the other side, special broadcast with my colleague Gautam Roy, taking you to all the developments, tracking Prime Minister Modi's US visit. Stay with us.